Hi guys, I'm Ben from Adaptalux, and in today's macro photography tutorial I've come down to the river, well into the river, because I want to photograph some of the things under the surface. Now this can be a little bit tricky, so we'll work through it together, but essentially we're going to be photographing from above the surface and lighting from under the surface. Stick around and I'll show you exactly what I mean in just a sec. So I fancied a challenge today, and what's more challenging than photographing something that's underwater in a flowing river? My feet are already quite cold and wet, but I'm ignoring that for the time being because there's some really cool textures, rocks and formations underneath this flowing water. And I think the flowing water is going to add an extra element to our photographs today. I'm going to get started by getting my camera out onto a tripod and pointing it down through the surface of the water. So as you can see, the reflections on the surface of the water are creating really nice ripples. I mean, this reflection on the surface of the camera is creating quite a reflection as well, but as the water is passing by, it creates some nice effects going over the surface of the water. And that's kind of what I'm looking for. I'm looking for, under the water, anything that's particularly interesting that might make a good photograph with those ripples over the top. So I might try one of these leaves that stuck on the rocks. I'm going to try a few different rocks, and then there's plenty of rocks that actually break the surface as well and create some more interesting ripples around the edges. So maybe a little rock like this would make for an interesting shot as well. The biggest issue that I'm facing right now is that the reflections on the surface of the water are much brighter than anything underneath the water. But I do have a solution to that, and I'm going to get out some lighting. So for those of you that perhaps don't know, our lighting arms are now IP67 rated, and that 7 at the end of the IP67 means that they're rated for being able to be submerged in water. Now that does only apply to the lighting arms, not the control pod, so the control pod is staying above the water, but we can happily bend these lighting arms down and under the surface of the water and light our rocks and interesting textures from under the surface of the water. That means that we can keep some of those nice, interesting reflections on the surface, and we can get some color and light under the surface to light the rocks themselves. Now this is going to change the nature of our photograph because the surface is going to be much less noticeable, and we're going to be picking up some particles and anything that's flowing by inside the beams of the light. So I've gone ahead and preemptively underexposed my shot here because I know that we're going to be adding quite a lot of light to this image. You can still see those reflections traveling by, but they're much less bright, less noticeable. And we're going to add some extra light to the rocks under the surface to get some extra interest. Now, I've got my Control Pod 3 here on a little mini tripod, just high enough to keep it above the surface, but with plenty of reach to be able to get our lighting arms down and underneath the surface. So I'm going to start off with a white lighting arm, and I'm going to plug that in and send it underneath the water. So as you can see, we've straight away got a lot of extra light under the water there, and it makes our rocks look a lot more dramatic. Now, opposed to bringing this in from the top of the water, you can see that we're actually creating some more reflections, and the highlights on the rock are having to pass through the ripples on the water. So that's adding a bit of, well, it might be interesting, but it's not really what I'm looking for today. I want to have my lights under the water, lighting up the rocks in a consistent way. I'm also going to be adding a little bit of color, so let's use a blue lighting arm, and I'm going to bring that from a different direction. So the blue lighting arm can come from this direction, and we've got a really interesting, colorful scene underneath the water. Now we can still see those ripples. They're still going to create an abstract effect over the top of the image, and we're also picking up all of the particulates that are floating along in the water, be they bubbles or little bits of dust or sand. They're traveling by and they're getting picked up in the image. Depending on your shutter speed, that means that we're going to get some streaks through our photograph. You can up your shutter speed to leave it at just a very small little bit of movement, or you can extend your shutter speed to create streaks all the way through your image. So I've moved to a deeper part of the river because there's a little leaf stuck on a rock here, and I think that might make for an interesting subject, especially once we light it up from under the surface. I'm going to position this first lighting arm so that it lights up the leaf from the side, and you can start to see those cool rippling effects affecting the image. Now it is going to affect our focus and the clarity of the image, but I think that's part of the abstract nature of a shot like this. The second lighting arm I'm going to bring in from the opposite direction to light up the other half of the leaf. This one I actually might want to bring above the surface of the water because it creates even more ripply effects. So despite this being a bit of an experimental shoot in order to try out the new IP67 rating of the lighting arms, it's turning into a really fun and interesting abstract shoot. The flowing water adds a really dynamic element to the images and to some video as well. If you're looking for some stock footage or something like that of some abstract water flowing, then this is a really cool way to do it. The ability to have lights involved in this as well is really important, particularly at this time of year where, well, it's only 3:30 and the light is already disappearing. So being able to light your own scenes, especially from under the surface of the water, is really, really cool. I'm going to play around with a few more colors and different types of shots, finding some different rocks and lighting them from different directions, both from above the surface and below the surface. I think there's a huge amount of variety to be had here because, as I mentioned, everything is dynamic. The flowing water changes the scene constantly. Even that leaf that we were photographing before, that decided to just unattach itself from the rock and float away before I was finished photographing it. So that's gone, but we can find more leaves, we can find more rocks. Everything is really cool, especially because of that flowing water element. So after the shot of my leaf, I've discovered that I actually really like that combination of one light being completely under the surface of the water and one light being on top. Particularly for video, that gives a really nice result of some rippling lighting effects under the water, but then also a consistent light from under the surface. I also really like the fact that because the water, well, it looks pretty clear, but it's really, really not. Because the water is murky just a little bit, we can actually see the beam angle of the light and really see every single little bit of stuff that is floating by. Now that's really cool both in stills because you can create some cool elongated streaks through your image, but it's also really cool for video. If you're wanting some stock footage or something like that, this is a really nice way to go about it. So I've plugged in a blue lighting arm here because I think blue looks really nice on this particular rock. We've found a nice rock that's got some cool textures on it. So I've lit from underneath the water with a blue lighting arm to give a nice consistent blue, but then we've got some white light coming from above the surface, which is creating some cool ripple effects on the rock from above the surface. So then guys, my feet are, well, they're pretty cold, they're pretty wet. I was hoping to go to the pub after this, but I don't think they'll let me in with waterlogged boots. So I'm going to call it a day today. I would recommend getting some wellies and coming out to the river just to play around with what you can find under the surface. Especially if you have some LED lighting arms, you can now freely use them under the water with that IP67 rating. If you'd like to know a little bit more about that, I will link down in the description to the announcement blog post where Sam talks about all of the developments and the certification for getting them completely submersible proof. I'd like to know from you guys whether or not you find this type of abstract shoot interesting. Let me know down in the comments if it's something that you might try out. If you find that it's not worth it getting your feet wet, then I'm sure I'll be back in the river soon enough to experiment with more underwater photography and underwater lighting in the near future. So make sure to hit the subscribe button for lots more macro photography tutorials, ideas and inspiration coming in the future. For now, that is all I've got time for. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.